Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Todd and Susan. And I just want to say hello to all of you. It's good to be with you today. We're going to go through a lot of things Gateway, and I just hope that each one of you is able to gain something from today that might help you with your reporting requirements coming up here. So hopefully next time I see you, we'll be able to meet in person. All right, so I'm going to start with my PowerPoint Gateway unit training. First, I'm going to do just an overview of what Gateway is, and then talk just a little bit about the 3 applications that you'll be using within Gateway. So for some of you who are new, the Gateway portal is a collaborative effort between several of the state agencies and the Indiana Business Research Center at IU. They maintain the servers, they do the programming for Gateway and so forth. So I work closely with them. Officials at local government units like yourselves are required to upload financial information for use by various agencies on Gateway. And I've listed those here, but today we're going to focus on just the ones for the State Board of Accounts. The State Board of Accounts has 6 applications on Gateway: the AFR, Annual Federal Report, the 100R, where you report your employee compensation, the Entity Annual Report, and this is for not-for-profit entities, so it won't affect you. Likewise, the ECA is for school extracurricular accounts. The Conflict of Interest Disclosure, which may affect some of you if you have related party transactions, you might have to look into that one. And lastly, the monthly and annual engagement uploads, and that's our newest application. So I've highlighted the 3 there that you'll be using. Now, how do you get on Gateway? You access it through an internet browser. Google Chrome and Firefox are the 2 browsers that are supported by Gateway. So if you use Internet Explorer, you might be able to do some things on Gateway, but you might be able to run into some glitches as well. So we really encourage you to use Chrome or Firefox when you're navigating Gateway. Here is the login page for Gateway. So you just enter this into your browser and it'll take you to the login screen. You'll be ready to go. Your username to log in is always your email address for everyone. And if you are new and you haven't got your user ID set up yet, you can send us an email at help desk. gateway@sboa.in.gov is the help desk email. So if you're having a problem, Gateway isn't working correctly for you, you can always email us at help desk at this address. Now, one question we get quite a bit is asking us to reset passwords. And so there is a link on the login screen to allow you to reset your own password through Gateway, so through your email. And you can do that, but after 5 bad attempts, cumulative, you will have to email us at help desk so we can reinstate your access at that point. The user guides are an important part of Gateway. They are loaded with a lot of useful information. In fact, when I'm on help desk, I frequently use the user guides myself and copy and paste information from the user guides to answer your emails. So here's a direct link to the user guides, and there's also several links within Gateway to the user guides. So I encourage you to use those. Also, the submitters are responsible for submitting all of the reports to Gateway, the AFR and the 100R, but you can also authorize an additional person to assist you with that as an editor. And if you'd like to do that, you complete the limited delegation of authority form. And here's the link to that form. So just email that to the help desk and we'll get someone set up for you. All right, so let's take a look at what we've been talking about. Here's the login page. You can see there's a link to the user guides before you even log in right here at the top. So I've entered my email, which is my username, and my password. Here is the forgot your password link. If you forget your password, which is easy to do, there are too many passwords floating around in my head, I know. Feel free to click here and they will send you an email automatically to reset your password. After 5 tries, though, you will have to email us and wait for us to go in and reset that for you. So when you log into Gateway, you get this screen that shows all the Gateway applications, the State Board of Accounts here on the right under the red bar. And again, the user guides are right here at the top of the page. It's a link to the user guides. Let's take a quick look at those. If you click on the AFR user guide, it'll pop right up for you. And sometimes you think, I don't want to have to read through all that to find what I need, but there's some easy ways to get what you need. For example, the table of contents here has links. So if you're wanting to figure out if you have an enterprise or not, you can just click on the link and it will take you right to that section. Another great way to find what you need in the user guides is to hold down your control key and click F, and it will bring up a screen at the top. So maybe you want to search for enterprises, and it will bring up all the incidents of enterprises, and you can just scroll through those here at the top. So you can find out quickly what you need to know with those user guides, and you don't have to wait for us to get back with you. So they're a great feature. All right, so let's go. Oh, and here's a copy of the delegation form. If you want to set up with editor access, just fill out this form, select the access that you want them to have here, which apps you would like them to help with, and sign at the bottom. Send it to us, the email right here, and we'll get you set up. Okay, so that's kind of the general overview of Gateway. Now we're going to talk about the 100R, mainly because the due date, January 31st. So it's coming right up, and I wanted to go through as much as possible with you to make it easy for you. The 100R is a pretty easy application to use. You'll report total compensation for everyone that received a W-2, including directors, on the 100R. You can either enter information manually or through a direct upload, and we'll go through an example of each one of those. Also, the information that you upload on the 100R is available publicly on the public database, so everyone has access to the 100R information. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm at the user guides. I'm going to go to the home page. The home page always gets you back to this screen. So it's, if you kind of lose track of where you are, hit the home icon there. So we're going to look at the 100R. You're going to select your unit. You'll probably just have one unit. And choose the year, and that will bring up the main menu for the 100R. First, I always like to just start at the top and work my way down. So start with the unit question. So it's going to first ask you how many employees you paid compensation during the year. So for our manual example, I'm just going to say 3. And then answer a few questions about the 100R, whether I'm going to upload the employee information or enter manually. So I'm going to do manual first. And then a few questions about what benefits you provide your employees. You can just check yes or no. If you provide benefits such as vacation days or life insurance, you'd want to click yes. There's a section for full-time and part-time employees. Then the next section is about the Nepotism policy and the contracting policy. So if you've uploaded these policies previously, it's going to already have the yes selected and kind of grayed out for you and indicate that there's a policy already on file for this unit. So if you've uploaded that in the past, it will carry forward for you. Once you've answered these questions, you can just click proceed, take you back to the main menu, and then you can enter employee data. Should pop up for us here. There it is. Okay, so it's still looking at that 30 that was entered before, so it's giving me 30 rows here. So I'm just gonna delete several of these, but I've already entered information for myself. So this is my city, and since I'm making up my own rules, I chose to pay myself $250,000. Why not? Because it's my city, right? So if I want to enter another employee, let's say I paid my catch, and since this is my city, I won't go to jail for paying my catch. Say she lives in Carmel. Whoops. I'm a terrible typist. You'll all know that by the end. She lives at home. Her address is in Carmel, Indiana. Make sure you complete all the required fields. If you don't, what will happen is it will not save that row for you when you go back. The cat will have disappeared. So she's the pet. She only makes $1,000 because sometimes she misses a litter box. But she gets free rent, so it keeps her fed. All right, so just the cat and I are the only employees. So we're going to save our work. Oh, and we get an error code saying it's not a valid zip code. I've entered an extra digit. Okay, so often when you have these pop-ups, they're for good reasons. So maybe you forgot a required field or so forth. So they warn you to check. So click Save All Work, and then you can return to the main screen. You can take a look at the nepotism policy. It's already been uploaded for you, but if you're wondering, did it change or not, you can click here to view it. If it looks good, there's nothing else you need to do. And the same way with the contracting policy. Once you have everything complete, you can check your 100R outputs. There's an output for the employee listing. So you can see the cat and I. And all the employees you have entered will be listed here. You can also review the answers that you gave to the unit questions. Make sure everything's correct before you prepare to submit the report. And back to the main menu. And we'll go to submit 100R at the bottom. Now, when I look at this, I can see, oh, I entered 3 employees and I actually only had 2. I forgot I didn't pay the dog this year. So I'll probably want to go back and fix that. So I'll go back to the 100R main menu, click unit questions, and select 2. I paid 2 people during the year. Now back to the bottom and see if I'm ready to submit. 2 and 2 now, they match, so that's a good thing. The top one is the number I entered on the first page, and the second number is the number of employees I entered. So it gives some information about those. If I'm ready, I can click Proceed to Submit 100R. And this is the final screen, and it's the certification. By clicking this button, you certify that you're the submitter and that you verify that you've recorded accurate and complete data on the 100R. Once you submit this report, you'll get an email that looks like this. And you'll want to probably print a copy of the email so you can document that you submitted your 100R on a timely basis, and just keep that for your records. So that is the manual submission of the 100R. You can also upload a CSV file instead of entering the employee data manually. And this is an example of what the CSV files look like. So the top one I've indicated is correct, and the bottom one is incorrect. So I just want to highlight on this slide the most common mistake or problem we encounter with the CSV upload file. A lot of times your vendor may have this file available to you. We do require that the last column, compensation, has a decimal point followed by 2 additional digits for the cents. All right, so it must be formatted like that for Gateway to accept it. And what oftentimes happens is someone will have it formatted that way, but when they open up the Excel file, the defaults will kick in, and so it will change it back to a whole number kind of format that's shown on the bottom. So I'm going to show you how to fix that to make sure that you can upload it with the proper compensation number format. All right, so let's do that now. Let's go back to the main menu. Unit questions. Now, let's say we have 30 people, so we really don't want to enter all those manually. So we'll choose 30. We will choose the upload instead of manual for how we're going to enter our data. Make sure the rest of the questions are correct. Proceed. And now it's taking us straight to the upload file section. So we're going to browse our computer and look for the CSV file. And it must be named gateway100r.csv and be laid out in the specific format I just showed you. So I'm going to click on that, click open, click upload file. And now you can see that it's been uploaded. So the next step is to have Gateway validate your file and make sure it's in the appropriate format. So you'll have to wait for just a few seconds for it to take a look at the file you've uploaded. And it says we have errors, detailed errors. So we can click here and bring up a report which shows what was wrong with our file. So you can see it here at the bottom. I'm going to open that up. And the first columns here are the file we uploaded. And these columns will show us where our errors lie. So the error lies in the total compensation column. The compensation is in an invalid format. So it's that problem we looked at on this slide. So now that we know what the problem is, we can go to our CSV file, which I'm finding here, and make the necessary changes. Okay, so this is the CSV file opening up for us. And as you can see, okay, well, for editing, we'll open it as a read-only because that seems to be our only option. All right, so what we will want to do is hit the number formatting button. We want to choose number, and we want to choose 2 decimal points. And once we do that, you can see that the compensation column now shows the decimal point and 2 numbers behind the decimal point. So you'll want to save the file and close the file. And once you've done that, you don't want to open the file again, because if you open it again, it will revert back to the initial file you had here. So once you've saved it, which I'm not going to be able to do right now because mine is locked, it's read-only for some reason. But then you'll return to the file upload, and you'll upload the file again now that you've saved it with the 2 decimal points and not opened it again on your computer. And then you'll be able to upload the file. I'd like to be able to show you what it looks like after it uploads. I'm going to try one more time here. I'm not sure why it would be locked for editing. Change it to number. Save. Okay, it looks like it saved it this time. So now I'm going to close that, not reopen it. I'm going to browse the files, find it again. Just open, upload, and then next step to validate the file that I uploaded. And it says file transfer was successful. So that means that the upload worked, but the form is not submitted. We still have to complete the submission process. So return to the main menu. And now if we look at the employee data entry, we should be able to see a list of all those employees that we just uploaded. And there they are. There's lots of Caldwells and Gordons on this list. I don't know. This unit may need to submit one of those conflict of interest forms. Okay, so that's how it will look. And then you're able to go back to the main menu if it looks fine. And choose Submit AFR. Again, I entered 30. There's actually 33. I'd want to go back and change that. Once I've done that, proceed to Submit AR, 100R, and choose Submit this report. And I will receive the email that says I've submitted and I'm all finished with the AFR for this year. So if I submit the AFR and I realize I forgot the directors, or I forgot I did pay my dog back in January, then I'm going to have to ask the Gateway Help Desk to unlock my 100R. That's one big difference between the 100R and the AFR. If you want to make a change to your 100R, you have to have us unlock that for you. You're able to unsubmit the AFR on your own, and I'll show you about that in a little bit. Okay, so that's everything I have on the 100R, which is our simplest app. So now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the AFR, the Annual Financial Report. The due date of the AFR is March 1st, 2021, so still coming up pretty soon. This is where you will upload information that we will use to, for your financial statements and to audit those. Most of the data from the AFR is also published publicly, so it's available to the general public online. And let's take a look at the AFR. So right now I'm in the 100R. I'm just going to go hit the home button. It's going to take me back to the application list. I'm going to choose the Annual Financial Report. I'm going to click on my unit, choose the year, and it's going to bring up the AFR. Now, if this is your first time in the AFR for the year, it's probably going to go ahead and automatically open the questions section for you. So the questions have to be done first because they're very important. Depending on the answer that you provide on the unit questions, you may or may not have to fill out other sections of the AFR. So for example, if you check you don't have capital assets, that section will disappear. And so it's important to get these questions right. There's just a couple I wanted to highlight for you. First of all, question 1, has your unit received or disbursed any federal money from grants? So for some of you, maybe you haven't in the past, but due to COVID, you have this year. So this might be something new for you. So you can read about it here. You can click additional information if you want to know more to see whether you have or not. They could have even come through a state or so forth. So that's an important question to get right. The other questions are pretty similar to what they've been in the past. We did make an update to question 5. Did you have outstanding debt at any time during the year, including at year end? So it's important to answer this question correctly. If you answer no, you'll lose 5.1a. If you answer yes, then it will ask you, do your bond covenants or loan agreements require you to receive an audit? So you can choose annually, biannually, or no in that case. So it's really important that we know if you're required to have an audit so we can plan in advance to get your audit scheduled so that you get the report in the time you need it for your debt. And question 5.2 is another new question on debt. Does your unit plan to issue new bond debt in the next 12 months? It's important for us to know because many times the bond debt does require you to have an audit opinion, and we don't want you to have a delay on being able to get your bonds issued. So let us know in advance by checking here if you plan to issue bond debt in the next 12 months so we can make sure we schedule your audit on a timely basis to get your report to you for that. Okay, so the rest of the questions are pretty self-explanatory.
Allison, sorry.
Yes.
Can you go back to question number 1?
Sure.
And yeah, it says, has your unit received or disbursed any federal monies from grants? And we had a question come in that if that included COVID reimbursements, and yes, it would. So any COVID money that you've received, that's considered federal dollars. So you would want to answer yes to number 1.
Okay. So yes to number 1 if you received money from COVID relief. Got it.
Thanks.
All right. So after you've answered all the questions, you hit proceed, and it will have you identify enterprises if you've indicated that you have some of those. For some reason, mine's going a little slow today. Maybe it's the WebEx software. There they are. So the enterprises are there. If you agree with those, you can just return to the main menu. And again, I like to just work my way down. So I would choose departments next. If I have departments, I can select the departments I have here on this list. And return to AFR. It looks like it's going to save those automatically. The next is a schedule of officials. You'll want to enter the schedule of officials here. Be sure you're comprehensive in entering these. I had a question last week on help desk that someone, and it would be convenient, you know, she's like, can we roll those over and populate them from last year, which is a good idea and sounds easier, but sometimes things change. And I know we had to issue a new report recently because someone just typed in the information from last year and forgot to update it for a change in officers. So the reason we have you type it all in is so we can make sure it's the current information and that you have looked at it and verified that it's the correct information for all your officers. So once you enter them all and enter your federal identification number, you can click Save All Work. And once you're satisfied it's complete, then you can click Mark Complete and Save All Work. If you don't have Mark Complete before you save all work, when you get to the end, it's going to tell you this section is not complete. If
Allison,
you find out.
Sorry to interrupt you again. If you could emphasize that, we get a lot of questions on that. They don't see that Mark Complete down there. And then we did have a question come in about saving your work. And can you show them how often they can do that and point that button out, please? Yes, as you enter, and say you got a couple entered, but you get called away to a phone call, you can just click the Save All Work. I think there may be one at the top too. Yeah, you can choose at the top or bottom, just Save All Work, and then you can pick up where you left off. It may not let you save a partial person, but it'll save, you know, the complete item. All right, so you can save them as you go, and then when you know that you're finished, you can check Mark Complete and click Save again. So after you check Mark Complete and click Save All Work and return to the main menu, then it'll be done. Now, if you find out that you clicked Mark Complete, but you left someone out, then you'll need to uncheck and click Save. Save that it's not complete, and then you'll be able to go back in and enter additional people. And then when you're finished, click Mark Complete, Save All Work.
Oh, it's telling me I can't because I entered that little blurb that was wrong. Where is it? There it is. That is not a valid date. Sorry about that. All right. So once you have everything right, click Mark Complete, save all work, and you can return to the main menu. All right, so the next section is the financial data by fund section. This is probably the most exciting section for us. So there's lots to enter in here. Again, you can do it manually or you can choose to do it with upload. Normally what you will see when you open this up for the first time is you will see the accounts that you had last year listed, and you will see the beginning balances from the accounts last year that have rolled over. So if you're doing it manually, you will need to go in and enter your receipts and disbursements. One thing I want to point out is that even though there's not an add or edit button under the beginning balance of cash, you can go in and change this amount. Okay, so you can change the beginning balances. I changed that from 400,000 to 350. That worked fine. And like I said, the receipts and disbursements would start out 0 when you first enter. There have been some entered here already. But say you want to add or edit general receipts, you would click here. It would bring up the page for you to be able to enter all of your receipts from property taxes or county option tax, so forth. Once you got that entered, click Save All Work. I would go back to the financial data by fund, do the same for the disbursements, and so forth. So as you can see, doing this manually will take some time going through. I also want to point out, if a fund that you had last year didn't roll over for some reason, I know that we made some updates to some of the funds, and some of you may still have been using a fund that had a balance at the end of the year. So since that one's been deleted, you'll need to add that back. And to do that, I'm going to click right here, add a fund to this grid. And if you want to enter, you have to enter all 3 items: the name that you use for the fund, the number you use for the fund, and then you can click Show All Funds, and you can go find the standard fund that the State Board of Accounts uses. So I think this is one that some of you may have to add back, cumulative capital improvement. So I'm going to select that, click to add the fund, and I get the message up here, the fund was successfully added. So now I can go back, my financial data by fund. Very slow today. So let's see if my fund showed up. I gave it a high account number, so I can page to the bottom and find it, and there it is. So we can see that the fund we just added is there. We can go in and enter the beginning balance in that fund and receipts and disbursements. So that's how you will get around if a fund has been deleted that you had an ending balance on last year. So once you have all these completed and reviewed, you can return to the AFR main menu, move on to the capital asset section. The capital asset section is really pretty much the same as last year, other than we have added these total lines for you, which will be helpful. So it'll automatically total them up for you, and then there's a grand total at the bottom. The next section is the grant, and this is if you did receive any federal money, you'll need to complete this section. One thing to note about this section, as you're completing the lines for the grants, you can't really see all the fields on the screen at the same time. So you need to use your scroll bar to go all the way over to make sure you enter something in all the required fields, or it's not going to save it for you if you haven't entered the whole row full of information. So some of these first rows are optional, but all the last ones, as you can see, are required fields. So we just have the one. We'll call it just grant one. Keep it simple. So we'll save our work. Return to the main menu. The next section is accounts payable receivable. I'd say this is probably the easiest one because you just enter those numbers real quickly and you're done. So here's what that screen looks like. The transfer schedule, I think this is a new schedule last year. Anytime you make a transfer from one fund to another, we'd like you to report it here. So there's one already listed. I'm going to add another one. So I will click here and I will choose the fund that it was transferred from. And then I'll choose the fund that the money was transferred to and enter the amount of the transfer here. Click enter. And then once I have all the transfers entered, I can save my work. Now, the goal is for the transfers listed here to also match the transfers that you entered in the financial data by fund section. So they should show the same account, should have a transfer, and this should be a more detailed of where it went from and to, whereas in the financial data by fund, it would just show the transfer in or out for that specific fund.
And Allison, if I can interject, get a lot of questions on this too, is because the transfer schedule will show, or they'll get the error message that transfers in and out don't agree, and that's because you've shown a transfer in one fund as a receipt or a disbursement in the other fund. So maybe you showed a transfer out of CCI, but you showed it as a receipt into the general fund. So you've got, if you show it as a transfer in one place, you have to show it as a transfer in the other place. So transfer out or transfer in both places, or otherwise you're going to get those issues. So we get a lot of questions about that.
Exactly. Yes. So if we see that you've made an entry in the financial data by fund and a transfer line, and you don't choose that account in the transfer schedule also, you'll get, you know, where is it kind of a notification. It won't keep you submitted, keep you from submitting your AFR, but it will let you know that you may have missed something there. So once you've entered the transfers, you can save the work. Actually, entering them is easy, right? It's figuring them out that's a little more difficult. Return to the AFR. And next is the debt section. There it is. So for each debt class, you would want to enter a description here, the name of the debt class, the beginning balance, additions, deletions, or reductions, and the ending balance. And then in the last column, you'll also want to enter the amount of principal and interest that's going to be due in 2021 in this last column. So again, you're going to have to use your scroll bar to go back and forth to get all those fields. Well, that one's pretty basic. Save your work. Always save your work. A lot of times if you don't, it will pop up and ask you to save your work. But I know, I always kick myself when I forget to save and then I lose something. All right, the next section is the OPEB section. And we do get a lot of questions from help desk about OPEB plans. In the past, many of you who had OPEB plans, you filled out this section in the AFR, plus you completed the requirement for DLGF. They had an OPEB application in Gateway that you went in and completed as well. Well, for the first time this year, you will not have to complete that application any longer. So the only OPEB reporting you'll need to do is right here on this page to the State Board of Accounts. So there will be no separate requirement, which is really nice. So an OPEB plan is when you provide benefits to former employees, okay, other than retirement, 401k, defined benefit type plans. So these are non-retirement benefits. So maybe you allow them to continue to participate in your life insurance or health insurance plan. Even if they maybe pay the current premium, it could be considered a benefit to them because they're getting at a reduced rate, and having them in your health insurance pool could change your rates for your whole group. So there is kind of an inherent cost to the employer to do that. So those would be considered OPEB plans as well. So I'm going to click Edit Plan so you can take a look at what the screen looks like. It's just a one-page screen. It asks for information, the name of the OPEB plan, what type of benefit it is, if it's medical or dental or both. You can list the plan administrator and all their information, and then the number of employees that are currently receiving benefits under the plans, that are entitled to but not yet receiving, and active employees that are currently receiving or entitled to. So if they've accrued this benefit where they're going to be able to participate after they retire, they'd be included in that number. It asks if there's been an actuarial report, and you can include that information as well. It asks you for contribution rates as a percentage of covered payroll, paid by the employer, paid by plan members, and then it asks you what covered payroll is and how you, what cost method you use. Once you've completed all those blanks, you can hit Save and be done with your OPEB reporting for another year. The next section is pensions, and I would say this can be a really simple section or really complicated depending on what plans you have. So you'll see the choices at the top. You see that you can't select Teachers Retirement Fund because that's not applicable to your unit type, but you may have one or more of these plans listed under number 1. Most of you will have PERF. Some of you may also have some of these others. So select the ones that you have. And if those are the only pension plans you have, you will just say no on number 2. You can mark this form is complete and save this form. And that would be very simple. But if you have other pension plans in addition to the ones that you have checked in number 1, then you want to check yes here. And we'll have to add information on those plans. And that's where it gets a little more fun. So say I'm going to add a plan and edit that plan. First, I'm going to enter the name of the plan. Say it's Marion's Defined Benefit Plan. Who's covered by the plans? Full-time employees. And go ahead and to enter the additional information about the plan. If the plan has vesting, you'll want to enter that here. If the plan has a possibility of forfeitures and you click yes, it wants you to upload a copy of the forfeiture policy from the plan. And then you can enter the information on the plan administrator, click Save. I can't save because I didn't complete all that, but I'm going to go ahead to page 2 anyway. And this is page 2. Page at the very top says, has there been an actuarial evaluation done? So if you click no, you're going to have this section to fill out. But if you click yes, then there's some additional information for you to complete. And it will want you to upload a copy of the actuarial report at the bottom. So one thing to note is some of the fields, for example, this total field right here, you won't be able to enter anything in that field. And then these last two fields here, you won't be able to make an entry in these fields. But once you have everything input and you choose save, it will calculate and show you the numbers in those fields at that time. So that's a quick overview of the pensions page. Now let's go back to the main menu. How am I doing on time? Oh, I think I need to speed up. Next is the risk assessment questions. Those are the same as they were last year.
You can take your time, Allison.
I can go over a little. Okay.
Yeah.
Here again at the bottom is one of these that you have to check to complete. So if you have all the questions done and you're marking them final, go ahead and click this checkbox and click Save the Form. And then once you do it, to make changes, you'll have to unclick and save, and then it'll allow you to make changes. All right, so we're done. We're going to click, we've submitted it, and we're going to save the form. I'm going to head back to the main menu. It's important to remember saving on every page. I can't really stress that enough because I know what a hassle it is when you have to go redo something. This is a surety bond section, and over here on the right, it will show you all of the people it wants you to enter surety bond information for. So here is a little pull down box. So we're going to start with the controller, and we're going to say, wait a minute, we don't have a controller. So we're going to check this box. If the position does not exist, we're going to check this top box. And we're going to click Save. And now our controller over here is checked off. So we're done with him. We've just entered that we don't have one. So the clerk treasurer, we have one of those, and if check if this position is not bonded, well, that may be a bad thing, you know. I think several of the offices are supposed to be bonded. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm going to say the clerk treasurer has an individual bond. His name is Stan Bear. The bond is $20,000, effective for calendar year 20. And then it wants us to upload a copy of the bond. So I'll click Choose File. I'll upload that one. And it will show up here at the bottom then, and you'll be able to review the bond file that you've uploaded. Now let's go to the clerk. The clerk, we're just going to say we just didn't bond the clerk. So we're going to save that. That's going to be indicated at the bottom. And the judge, again, just to get through them all, I'm going to go ahead and say that he's not bonded either. So now we have all our check marks here in the status box and a list of all of them at the bottom. And if we're satisfied it's correct, we want to click this box to show that we're complete. And I don't see a save button on this one. So it looks like it's automatically saved them individually, so we don't have to save them as a group. So back to the AFR main menu. Now we're ready to look at the upload file section. So if you really don't want to enter all that information manually, and your software vendor can provide you the file to upload it, you can click here and upload the file. I already have some information entered. If I go in and upload these files, it's going to overwrite the information I have entered. So whatever I have entered already is going to be lost if I upload the file. So it's going to write over the beginning balances. It's going to write over everything. So we're going to click no, we don't have departments for our example. So you have to choose whether you want to do all the uploads or none of them. So you have to do all 4. You can't just do receipts and disbursements and not do beginning balances, for example. So we're going to go through those. We're going to upload the contact information. So we're going to browse our computer. And again, the uploads will have to have a certain name. This will have to be named contact.txt, and they'll have to have a certain format. So we can upload that file. And now it's going to show this in the status box. It was uploaded. Now we can go ahead to beginning balances, browse, choose the begbal.txt file, open that up, click upload. Do the same for the receipts. And lastly, the disbursement. So now we have all our files uploaded. We'll click next step. And hopefully we didn't make any errors. Oh, it says we do have errors. Interesting. So we can view our errors by looking here. Oh, it wants us to match our enterprises. So water, wastewater. I'm hoping I get these right. Stormwater, and submit those. Enterprise match successful. Next step. Okay, and now we can find out what kind of errors we had in our beginning balance file.
Allison, when you get to a second, there's a question that you'll need to address.
Okay, so it's saying our fund number. Fund number is not valid. So we entered a number that had an invalid number, and that's why. So we'll have to now go into our beginning balance fund and make a correction. And it tells you exactly what line your error was on and exactly what column. So that's really helpful if you do have an error in your report. Okay, so what is the question?
The question is, how do you know what format a file needs to be in to upload?
Right, so there's information about that in the user guide. And if when we first went to the upload section, look here at the bottom, there's actually a link to the directions. So you can put your file in the right format. So use this link. And it will go through the vendor file upload steps. So lots of information about that in the user guide. And I believe there's also some information about that on the SBOA website where you can look and see how to lay out the files. And I'll be happy to provide them a link to that. I don't know if I can get to it super quick here, but I'll be happy to share that later. Okay, so that's how the upload files works. Once we've done that, we can take a look at the annual report outputs. We can look at them individually, or we can go to the bottom and look at the full report to verify that all the information we've entered was correct. And so this will be lots of pages long. So this is basically a printout of everything that you've entered into Gateway. So you can review that as needed. You could print it for your records. So we're getting close to finishing here. The next thing we can do is review the submission. So we'll look at the submission errors, and we have some. So the items listed at the top under submission errors, these are items that will have to be cleared before you can submit your AFR. The submission warnings at the bottom are things you should read through and things that could be a problem, but it won't keep you from submitting the AFR. You'll see here some of the ones on transfer schedules down in the submission warning. Up at the top, some of our submission errors. The first one here, fund has no balances or activity. So you'll get this one when on your financial data by fund, you have a fund listed that had zeros all the way across. It doesn't like that because they shouldn't be on there if you're not using them, I guess. So what we can do is just go back to the financial data by fund and scan through there and see which one has all zeros, or if there are more than one. Okay, so I usually start at the top. Ah, there it is. Go bond that cash has zero balances all the way across. So we either need to make an entry or delete that account. So I'm gonna be brave and go ahead and delete that. Then we can go back to our review submission and see that that error is gone. All right. So the next one is the ending investment balance is negative. Again, that's in the financial data by fund section. So we can just go back and take a look and see which fund has a negative ending investment balance. That shouldn't be happening, right? You can't invest less than zero. I don't have a balance of less than zero. I'm sure there's always an exception to that. So in the stormwater fund, it looks like we have a couple of balances less than zero. So I'm going to fix that. I'll fix it this way. All right, so now they're positive investment balances. We can go back to our submission report, see if we've cleared that item that's keeping us from submitting. Oh, it says we still have an ending investment balance is negative. Guess I didn't get them all. But you get the idea. We want to go through the submission errors item by item and figure them out, and then we'll be able to submit. So I'm going to give it one more try here. Oh, here's an ending balance in cash. So I'm going to just adjust the beginning balance. And it'll be up to you to figure out why yours is negative. I know it won't be quite that easy. All right, so review submission. And then we still have one. Maybe I didn't save that. That could be it. investment balances or ending cash balances are negative. Oh, there's one more. I'm going to click Save All Work. Turn to the main menu. Look at the submission. Well, I can't get rid of that one. Who put all these negative numbers in? I don't know. Sometimes we do that to just test things, and this one is really working well. All right, the other submission error is pension information is not completed, so maybe we didn't check that little box at the bottom. Take a quick look at that. I think I maybe didn't type in a full screen, so for right now, I'm just going to say no. We don't have any other plans. This form is complete. Save this form. And hopefully that submission error now has disappeared. And it has. So we're down to this ending balance is negative. I really wanted to be able to submit for you guys, but I'll leave it there. So once we get all the submission errors worked out, you can choose Submit Annual Report. Again, it will show us these problems, but if we don't have them, we can click Submit Report, and then there'll be a final screen that shows that we're certifying that we're submitting the AFR. After we do that, we will get an email like this, and it's like a prize, right, that we want to frame. It says, yes, we submitted our AFR, and we have documentation that we got it in on time. So that's the AFR. On the AFR, only a submitter can unsubmit if you need to make changes. So it's right there on the main screen where you would have clicked submit. It changes to unsubmit once you've submitted. So the help desk cannot unsubmit your annual report for you. You would do that yourself right here. Now, if it's for a year that's already been audited and closed and someone has locked that, whoever the audit manager that locked that when they finalize the report is the one that would have to unlock that for you. But for the current year, you can do it yourself. All right, the third one and final item is the engagement uploads. I just wanted to highlight those real briefly. We made some changes effective December 2020. So I've highlighted the changes we made. There's still 3 monthly uploads, but to the first one, we've added bank statements and outstanding checklists. We'd like you to upload those monthly as well. For the annual uploads, we still have these pre-existing annual uploads. We added amendments to the salary ordinance one just to clarify. That was really always the requirement. And then we have some new annual uploads, an annual payroll history report, an annual funds ledger, and if you have a court trust fund, a subsidiary detail of that. The last one is just an optional Excel data dump that maybe your software provider can give you to upload for us in lieu of the detail of receipts and disbursements. So those are our new annual uploads, those items, and really the engagement uploads altogether have been real key in helping us do our audits on a remote basis. So you probably have received a direct request email. This is what that looks like. So if you have one, you'll want to go into the monthly and annual engagement uploads. So click the home button, choose monthly and annual engagement uploads. Click your unit and the year. And then you can upload your items here. So for a direct request, you would select direct request. You might have several to pick from. Choose the file they've requested you to upload. Oh, it doesn't like that file type. All right, so we'll choose PDF form, submit it. And then it will show down here at the bottom, so you can download or delete it. So that's how you accomplish the direct request that you receive by email. Once you upload this to Gateway, you should probably let your audit team know that it's there, so they know that you've provided it and to look for it.
Allison, while you're there, sorry, if you
That's
could,
okay.
is there a, in your example online, is there a annual funds report that's been downloaded or uploaded down in the annual uploads?
There's a monthly funds report in the user guide. So let's see, we need the other user guide. Let's see if I can find that real quick for you. I click the home button. This will just be an example of how those user guides work. All right. So we want the user guide for monthly and annual engagement uploads. And you're wondering about the annual upload and the annual funds ledger. So here's the paragraph that describes what the annual funds ledger is supposed to look like. And if you click here, manual records template, it should bring up an Excel file, which you can use as an example for that. So I think it may say monthly on the file that comes up, but it's the same format that we would like for the monthly funds ledger and the annual funds ledger. Only obviously the annual should cover the whole year. I'm not seeing the link pop up. Ah, there it is. I think it's just my slow computer. So this is what it would look like. So right now it says month, but you could just change the month to year for the annual funds ledger. Does that make sense?
I think so. And while you're going back, and before we get too far away from the AFR, I wanted to, there was a question that came in the chat. This person's having trouble uploading stuff. They've tried to upload their financial information and they're getting SBOA fund errors, specifically SBOA disbursement numbers. They wanted to know, can they still upload it and then change it in the AFR, or does it have to be fixed like within their system before they upload it, if that makes sense?
I think the way to do that would be to modify your Excel file that includes those. So you could still export it from your system, but where it indicates the little X's on your detailed error reports, you could go and fix those and then upload. I don't think it will let you go ahead and upload if it has those bad disbursements codes in there.
Okay. And Peggy, if you're still listening, that may be something that your vendor can help you with if it's Keystone or whoever it is. Make those changes before you upload. But yeah, you can't. That's why you can't do it and then change it in the annual report itself.
Yeah, now after you've uploaded, you can go in and make changes in the financial data by fund section, but when you make the uploads, you'll have to only include those allowable things. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I think I'm at the end of what I had. So if anybody has any questions for me or Todd or Susan, I guess I'll let you guys take it from here.
Well, I have one that you can probably show them since you have everything up. I've lost it now. Oh my, there's more that for some reason I was not seeing this. There was a question or a chat that talked about, oh, it was a chat, that's why I missed it. Can you go to the financial data by fund, like in your example?
User guides here.
And then just pick any fund like the general fund. And then go to the receipts and the add edit. The question is, where in the annual financial report is investments? So example, the purchase and sale of CDs. So if you can click on that, and then scroll down, I think it's in the very last section. So it's always going to be an other. So you can see under other receipts there on that top line, I can't read the dollar amount, but it says sale of investment. So if you cash in a CD, you've sold that investment, the bank's giving you the money, you're going to record that sale, on that line. And then when you go to the disbursement activity, the add edit, where it takes you to the detail of disbursements, under other disbursements, there's a line that says purchase of CDs. So Christine, when you ask that question in the chat, that's where you would find those things. And then
Here's the disbursement one. Is a purchase of investments. There it is. Took me a second.
Yeah, so that's where you would show that. Okay, well, thank you, Allison. That was very informative, and I think I've tried to address at least the Q&As that came in through Q&As, but like Susan mentioned earlier, I think what we'll do now, and Susan, stop me if I'm wrong, is go through those Q&As, try to address. I'll read the questions that we've already received and the questions that the answers that we gave, and then any new ones that come in. We had a question about the Nepotism Certificates. We talked about the nepotism policy, and Allison showed you where that policy rolls forward if you have uploaded your nepotism and contracting policies from previous years. Excuse me. Those annual certificates is what the question is about, that all elected officials have to fill out at the end of each year. You don't have to upload those anywhere. There's no requirement for that. You can just keep those locally. And if we need to see them, we'll ask for them during an audit. And so there isn't anything you have to do with those annual certifications.
And Todd, while you're going to your next one, we had a question in the chat about if an employee, would you show them, if they're paid by 3 departments, would they be shown 3 times on the 100R? And the answer to that would be no. You're just going to show them 1 time for the full amount of their salary, and then for the department, you can just choose the primary department that they work for.
The next one in the Q&A asked about the annual report needing to be advertised, and it still does. There's not been any change to that. You can look in the user guide. I know one of the FAQs in the user guide addresses that. Also, when you're looking at your all of your report outputs, and you get into, you've entered all of your information, then you're down there at the bottom on like your main menu. One of the Allison's probably going to show it here. One of the options is your report outputs. And then if you scroll to the bottom of that page is a link to what you can click on for advertising. It says advertising options. Click on that link. It will give you the file, the information that just needs advertised. So you can take that information right there and send it to your newspaper for advertising. The next one in the Q&A, I think I've addressed it. On the questions, the unit questions in the annual report, number 1 talks about, did you get any federal dollars? And the question that was submitted was, does that include COVID? And yeah, so your COVID reimbursements are federal dollars. if you received them in 2020, you're going to want to answer yes to that question and report those under the grant section. We're hearing a lot of units, particularly smaller towns, that submitted requests last year and are now getting some of the reimbursements. So in 2021, you won't show those until the next annual report. It'll be the year that you receive the reimbursement. That's when you want to report it on your annual report. So if you got a check yesterday that was a COVID reimbursement, even though you paid for that item last year, you're going to want to report that on your annual report for 2021 that you'll do in January of 2022. There's a question too about GAAP, if you're issuing GAAP statements, and what did GAAP mean? And that stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. And that would be if you're going to do a report, financial statements that have accruals, the GAAP method of accounting. Most of you are doing regulatory statements, which is like cash basis, cash receipts in, cash disbursements out. And so that question won't apply to you. The reason that it's there, if you're going to do GAAP statements, is there's a little extra work on our end needed to audit those. And so we need to plan accordingly for that. And that's what you have to notify us if you are going to do that, so that we can work you into the schedule. And a new question came in, so my list jumped back up to the top. So let's see. There was a question, if you don't finish the report in one sitting, can you save your work? And I had Allison specifically point that out, that if you're working away on it and it's lunchtime and you need to get up and go away, and you can save your work and come back to it later and finish or keep going. I think she stressed, saving your work on each page as you go through that, or each thing that, you can hit that save work button as often as you want. And it's probably to your benefit to do that. So that you don't lose anything. I know a few years ago when Gateway first came in, that if you timed out, if something happened and you got pulled away and it timed you out, or if you left for lunch, it wouldn't always save your work. So that feature was added a few years ago, and so you want to take advantage of it and save as often as you can. Let's see.
We do have a couple of questions on number 5. At least, I don't know if that's a risk question or a unit question. A lease agreement with a vendor for police cars would qualify us for question number 5. I believe the answer to that would be yes. But the second question related to that, well, maybe it's a different question. 5. What do we check for 5A if we're supposed to have an audit every 2 months? 2 different question 5s.
Yes. If you're supposed to have one every 2 years, then it would be biannually, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And depending on your debt, could depend on how frequently you have to have that. If it's an SRF, I think they want one every 2 years. If it's just a bond, I think the bond rating companies like Standard & Poor's and Moody's, they want it every year. Kind of related to that, well, I just had a question came in, so it jumped down. Hang on a second. Someone asked, my sewer department's looking to do upgrades with a loan from SRF and a grant from OKRA. Will I answer 5.2 as yes? And yes, you would answer that as you're planning on issuing debt in the next 12 months. Those SRFs take some time before they get out. So if you are having an SRF and you tell us, or maybe you call or email and say, I've got an SRF, our first question might be, when is your closing date? We have a lot of people that will have their bond advisors, or maybe they're working with a consultant, and it'll be right at the end, and they'll say, oh, you need to let the Board of Accounts know that the Finance Authority wants an audit before they close on this SRF. So that's a question, or that's information we need to know is, when is your closing date? If your closing date is in a couple of months, we'll do what we can to get in there and get it done. If it's at the end of the year, if it's next December, we'll still be able to work that in our audit plan, but we probably won't do your audit until closer to that closing date.
We had another question, Todd, about, is the payroll history, the annual payroll history, the same thing as the 100R? And the answer to that is no, they're not the same. The 100R shows compensation for a person in total, but the annual payroll history report is going to show information by check number. So it's a much more detailed listing for the annual payroll history report. And I believe, Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not required for hand posted records, right? Is that correct? Even though it doesn't quite say that there's no button for that.
Right. If you have manual records, you're not required to upload the annual payroll history report.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question was, in the grant reporting section within the annual report, is that just for federal grants, or is it for federal and state grants? And the answer is that's just for federal grants. If you have state grants, you don't have to report that in that section. You're just going to want to report the federal grants there. So even your community crossing grants, those are 100% state money, so those do not get reported in the grant section of your annual report. Here was a question I don't think I did answer during the presentation. Does the upload for bank statements include the check images? And the answer to that is, if it's part of your bank statement, then yes. If you get your bank statement in the mail, or you go online and print your bank statement off, those optical images are usually included in the pages of your bank statement. So yes, we want the bank statement, which 99 times out of 100 is probably going to include those check images. So yes, we want those as well.
There's another question in the chat about upload. Can they upload the cumulative register by week? And I'm not exactly sure what that cumulative register is, but if you look in the user guide, the annual payroll history report has specific things, specific items that's needed for that. So if your cumulative register has that information, that would be okay. But there are certain things listed in the user guide that are needed.
There was a question that came in about a city court that had closed during the year. I think it's when we were talking about transfers, and the question was, how do we handle the balances in those court-related funds that you had on your records up until the time the court closed? When a court closes, any cases or any of those historical records now get handled by the circuit court in your county. And if there are court-related monies on hand on your ledger, those monies go to the court as well. And I think there was a confusion on, do those get shown as transfers? Because the thinking was, I've transferred them to the county. For your accounting purposes, you've really dispersed them from your ledger and given them to the county, and the county would show them as a receipt in. So you wouldn't show them as a transfer in or out. Well, a transfer out in this case. So that shouldn't affect your transfer schedule.
I've had another question in the chat that says, so we need to enter monies received from the State CARES Act. And if it's money that's received through IFA, then that is federal dollars to be reported on the grant schedule.
Then there was a question about on the risk assessment questionnaire, question number 14. I think it's referring to electronic payments. And what they're asking for is the payment of claims electronically, that paying them via electronic methods has to be approved by council. There's a statute that talks about that. When that question comes up, I'm gonna maybe have Allison read it because her eyes are better than mine is really small on my screen.
What number?
14.
It says, are electronic fund transfers, EFT, permitted for cash? And 14A, if yes, are electronic fund transfers approved?
So the first part of that is to pay the, like I said before, to make payments electronically, council has to approve those. The way the statute is written, you're going to make those by check. There's no statute that says it can be done by other methods if council approves that. So if they've allowed you through their action to make electronic payments, you can do that. But those still have to be approved. So even though you're maybe making an electronic payment or some kind of wire transfer or anything electronic, does that still go through the approval process by council like a claim would had you written a check? So it should be part of the claim docket or part of a docket or something where they're seeing, okay, yes, on January the 20th, we made a electronic funds transfer of $1,000 and that they've approved that. So there's two approvals there really. Have they approved you to even use that method in the first place? And second, each of those transactions that you're paying electronically, have they approved those?
And another question we have is there a deadline date for the annual uploads? And the answer to that is yes, there is. It's March 1st, the same as the AFR.
My next one, excuse me, talked about the financial assistance to non-governmental entities. And if you had to include monies that you received for COVID-related grants and then you sent out to your local businesses. And our position is yes. So if you got COVID money that you sent out to 2 local businesses or 200 local businesses, those would be financial assistance to those non-governmental entities that you would have to put on that schedule in the annual report.
Okay, oh, go ahead, Todd, sorry.
Had one question about the Cifa, the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Assistance. And does that schedule get generated from the annual report? And yes, it does. The Cifa, it's generated from the grants section. So when you're entering information on that grant schedule within the annual report, that's the document, or that's the information that your Cifa is created from.
There's another
reason. Sorry, and another reason why that grant section is that's why it's only federal grants. It's not state grants there, because that data is what compiles your Cifa. Okay, sorry.
Okay, no, sorry. There's a couple of things in here on capital asset reports. Somebody says they're working on their capital assets and their consultant plans to have that to them by March 1st. And if they don't have it by March 1st, which is better to go ahead and submit the AFR without it or to file the AFR late when they get it. And the first answer to that is please file your AFR on time. With the best information that you have available. If you have information on your capital assets in there from last year, and you can go ahead and enter your additions and reductions to arrive at an ending balance, I think that would be a good thing. Again, if that's the best information you have available, then when your consultant gets you the information that they've compiled and that you've approved, if you need to go in and change your AFR, you can go in and unsubmit it and make those changes to the capital asset schedule and then resubmit it. And it will still show that you submitted it initially on time. There's a couple of other things on capital assets. A question that we get often here in the office is on that capital asset schedule, it has in the additions and reductions section for every category that you have. So even if you don't have any changes, you still have to enter a 0 there and take that required word away, or it will say that you have an error. So if there's no changes to that category of capital assets, then go ahead. Yeah, Allison's showing you right there. Just make sure that you enter a 0 there if there was no activity for that. And some other people have called in, particularly with the capital asset schedule. They're not seeing the schedule, and Usually when that happens, you're not in Chrome or Firefox, you're in something like Internet Explorer. So if it looks blank, then check what you're using and make sure it's Chrome or Firefox.
I have a question about rainy day. And this particular unit wants to do a resolution to transfer to rainy day from general in the February council meeting and date the transactions for December 31st and make the motion resolution retroactive, or is it too late to do that for 2020? It's not too late. You can transfer from rainy day to general at any time for any fiscal year. So I wouldn't date transactions that are 12/30 at this point that you're going to be doing in the February meeting. I would just, in the February meeting, if they want to transfer an amount, an unencumbered balance from the prior year to the rainy day, you can go ahead and do that. There's a question on the information for the CARES Act. I don't want to go over that at the end because we have to switch Allison from being the presenter to me being that, and I don't want to have to go back and forth presenting screen. So the information that you need for the CARES Act to report in your annual report, you can get from the place or the entity that gave you the CARES money. That's probably going to be the Indiana Finance Authority, so they should be able to tell you what the name of the grant is and that CFDA number, because I think that's what the question is asking for. So we have a slide. We've talked about that a couple of presentations ago back in the fall, and so I'll show you those before we're done of what the primary numbers are and some of the other ones that we were aware of. Yeah, I also have a question. Where do I go? Where do I go to get the information for redevelopment authority? Do I have to pull the information out of the city annual financial report and manually add that information to the redevelopment authority annual financial report? The answer is yes, you have to pull that. If you have a redevelopment authority and you have redevelopment authority funds on your ledger, the redevelopment authority is a separate entity, so it should be set up separately in Gateway and it should have its own annual financial report. So you don't want to include, if you're a city, let's say you're the city of Todd and there's a Todd redevelopment authority, I don't want the Todd redevelopment authority financial information in the city of Todd's annual financial report. I'm going to have to pull that out and put it on the redevelopment authority's separate annual financial report. So it'll just be those funds that you have on your ledger for the redevelopment authority. Don't put them in the city or town's annual financial report, put it in the redevelopment authority's annual financial report. If you have a redevelopment authority and you don't have something set up in Gateway, you'll want to send us an email because there's certain information that we will need, and we can get the redevelopment authority established in Gateway so that you can do that annual financial report. But yeah, those two are separate, and you're going to have to pull it out of the city or town report and put it in the redevelopment authority.
Can I have a question on which bond should we upload for the 2020 AFR, the surety bond? Since we're reporting 2020 bonds, or would we upload 2021 bonds? I was thinking it would be 2020, but Allison, is that covered in the user guide?
No, let's take a look. Let's see. Oh, wrong user guide. Okay. I'm gonna go home. Oops, sorry. First, user guide. So I'll click Control F and put bonds. Did I miss something? Whoa. Yeah, I don't see where it's saying. Normally for gateway uploads, we want the uploads to be current. So the 2020 uploads would be information we would use for auditing 2020. So I would think we would want the bonds that covered 2020.
It also says, Allison, right in the first paragraph,
Oh, okay.
so what?
Yeah.
Then, I mean, if you have your 2021 bond information, I'm sorry, I didn't know the answer to that question, but I do now. Okay.
I have a question about capital asset. And they asked, they're having their capital assets revamped. Do I wait and file my annual report or go ahead and submit it and then do an edit to the capital assets? That's something I certainly wouldn't want to hold up you submitting your annual report for. I would go ahead and submit it. And then if you happen to, when you get your asset records in order, or if you're having like a valuation done by a consultant who's going to give you a report at some time of here's what your assets were at the end of the year, then you can go back in and submit, make the changes to the capital asset schedule and resubmit it. But I certainly wouldn't wait until you get that because you may not have a guarantee you'll have it by March the 1st.
There's also a question on is the deadline, what is the deadline date to advertise the AFR? And that would be March 1st as well.
Then there's a question about the unit has an SRF grant. They've used all the money and they're in the repayment stage, and they're asking if they still need an audit every 2 years. I would probably check with the Indiana Finance Authority, but it's my understanding that, yeah, that even when you're in that payback period, you still need an audit every 2 years, but you'll want to check with the Finance Authority because they're the ones that want that audit report and see if they want it every 2 years while you're in the repayment phase.
Question on stormwater assets. Optional to report assets for stormwater, and I don't think it is. I think those are, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, but I think you record stormwater assets just as you would any other assets. Is that being required? It says it was new this year, but I wasn't aware of that.
I think it is just shown as an enterprise like your other utilities would be. I don't think, and I don't know, maybe it is broken out by utility. That may be one that we'll have to get a better answer and send that out because I guess I don't know either.
Okay.
We had a question if we could let everyone know how the COVID grant should report it. How should it be reported in each box? I'm not sure how. I am not sure how particular each of the boxes should be for the CARES fund. Allison, do you still have that test report open? If you could pull that up, I can try to walk through that. How particular each box needs to be, I can tell you that the CFDA number is very important. So that one needs to be particular. You need to know what grant you're getting and reporting. And associated with that CFDA number is a grant name. And so those two should match, and you should be able to find that information. If you go back to some of the presentation materials and some of the stuff I'll show you here before we're done, there's a website where you can go and check out what the CFDA number is and type that in. It'll give you the name or vice versa. But when you are looking at those lines, you're going to put the local project name in that first box. So that could be whatever you called your fund, COVID fund, COVID provider relief fund, the COVID payroll, COVID, whatever you're calling it on your records, you can put in that box. It's this next box, the federal program title, that's important. And then the 3 columns to the right of that, the CFDA number. Those two are going to be important. If you have going back over to the federal program title column, if you know that, the federal agency, you're going to have to find out as well. That's usually the Department of Treasury, but it could be other federal agencies depending on the type of COVID grant that you received. And then your pass-through agency is going to be who gave you the money. Did the Indiana Finance Authority give you the money? Did some other entity send you your money? That's what you're going to put in that column. Again, the CFDA number, the award name, and the award number. If you have that information in what the finance authority or whomever sent you the money gives you, enter that there. The COVID name and the federal program title and your local project name might all be the same. The award name and number aren't as particular as some of those others that we've talked about. So I think hopefully maybe that answers your question on how particular some of those boxes need to be. And then as you scroll over, again, the grants are most likely reimbursements. Is there in the grant type, Allison, is there a drop down, or do they just have to type that in? Yeah, there's a drop down. So it's advance or reimbursement. Your local fund number and name isn't much different than that very first column, but the fund number you'll want to put in there. So it's either 150, 151, or something in that range, as we had directed before. If you got that money way back in March or April of last year, that because you had ambulances and you did EMS billing and you got money from the COVID provider relief fund, when that first came out, we said that had to be Fund 264. So if you have that, you're going to want to use Fund 264 there, or whatever else you've called it. And then your receipts and disbursement activity for the year, which if you got your disbursements last year, your receipts and disbursements are probably the same. They should be the same. And then as you go to the right of that column, if you got money, COVID money, or any grant money, and you send it on to another subrecipient, you'll put that money in there. That's probably going to be rare, but you would enter any amount that you did. Any amount of loans outstanding at year end related to the COVID, there shouldn't be any non-cash federal assistance for COVID. There shouldn't be any. And the amount of insurance in effect during the year for COVID grants, there shouldn't be any.
And then Todd, while you're there on disbursements, I'm sorry, there on that, we had a question come in. Do we enter each reimbursement amount we receive, even if it is part of the same project name?
No. If it's all part of the same name or the same grant or CFDA, you're just going to want to enter right there in total. Had a question come in. We were talking earlier about uploading and bank statements and the images of the checks. And this question said our bank statements don't include the check images, but it does show every check number. So then for the upload purposes, you'll want to upload that bank statement with the check numbers on them. But you'll need to also know that for audit, we're going to need to see copies of those checks. So you might want to check with the bank to see if it's possible for you to get those optical images, or if you have access to them online. We might, during an audit, if we're doing a claims test and we have 50 claims, we're going to need to see the front and the back of those 50 claims. So we might be able to give you a list that you could sit down at your computer, log into your account, print those off. Or if you don't have that access, then you're going to need to get copies of those from the bank, and that will involve a fee. The bank's going to charge you for that if you have to go that route. If you can get them online, like I can sit down on my computer and look at my personal bank account and see my canceled checks front and back, because they don't come with my statement either. but I can see them online, so that's not an issue. But if I couldn't, I would have to get it from the bank, and that's where the banks like to charge. So. There was a question, how do I get the CFDA number for a grant? You need to contact again who provided the funds to you. If it's the finance authority, they should be able to give you that grant number. And then before we're done, in the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'll show you what we gave you in previous presentations. Had a COVID grant money for small business. The money was given to the businesses. It is federal money, but we did not, as a town, did not keep money. It was all distributed. Do we report total amount in the grant section? Yes. I think that may be very similar to what you just asked, Susan. If you got grant money and you send it out to 50 different businesses, you're going to run in the grant section, just show the total. You don't have to list it to each of those. What you might have to do is in the financial assistance to non-governmental entities, you will have to show it individually. So you're going to have to show, I gave it to business A and how much, business B and how much, and business C how much. Is depreciation of capital assets required? It is not this year. That was something that we had talked about in previous years that we're going to implement for this year. With COVID and all of the challenges it's presented to everybody, our board made the decision to postpone that. That enhanced regulatory reporting, which included depreciation of your capital assets on your annual report, and no, that's not required this year. I would look for it to be there next year. The next question was, we took our sanitation department out of our general fund for this year, and it's funded through trash collections and user fees. Does that qualify it to be reported as an enterprise fund? And yes, for your annual reporting purposes, that would meet the definition of an enterprise fund. So for your annual report, I would show that fund, or you pulled it out of your general, it's in its own fund now under enterprise. Next question I have is, are the reimbursements we receive from the Indiana Finance Authority considered a grant? And if they're COVID, then yes. If you had some other kind of reimbursement, I guess it would depend on what those were. But likely they are a grant. And the COVID, oh, she said, never mind, she found the answer. I'm not sure I understand this question, so it may take the person that wrote it to maybe contact us directly, but it says, if our software bank statement already shows the outstanding transactions, do we still need to upload a separate report for that? If you mean the outstanding checks that go with your bank statement, your bank reconciliation, yeah, we need to see those. And Allison, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think they need to be uploaded separately because those go to different places in Gateway. They go to different tables. The bank reconciliation would go to one place, and the outstanding checklist would go to a different place.
We listed them all under the same heading, so it's really optional, whichever they want to do it. So they can upload the bank rec, the bank statements, and the outstanding checklist all as one upload, or they can upload 3 individual files under the same heading.
Okay. And then under the subrecipients of the CARES grant, would that be the reported money that was provided to small businesses if the city passed that money on to qualified businesses for support funds? If you got your COVID grant and you disperse that out to private businesses, I would not put that in that subrecipient column. It's the one there right about in the middle of the page, amount of federal awards provided to subrecipients during the year. I would show that on the schedule of financial assistance to non-governmental entities. Susan, are there any others that you have? Because I'm at the end of my list.
Okay, there are a couple in here. Next year, do you mean if that's what you meant? And that is for 2021.
You might need to repeat
correct?
that. You broke up for me.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if you broke up everywhere or not. But
regarding depreciation by next year, do you mean reporting for 2021?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I do have another one. CARES Act reimbursement, is this federal or state? And if it's through IFA, then it is federal. If we applied in 2021 but received it in, I'm sorry, if we applied in 2020 but received it in 2021, what year do we report in? It's been
2021.
2021, correct.
It'll
yes.
be the year you received the reimbursement.
Okay, and we received $250,000 for small business COVID grants, and we had a match of $50,000. For grants, does only the $250,000 get listed?
Yes.
And then the $50,000 goes to other disbursements?
Yes.
Okay, that's all the question. Well, I have a couple of administrative questions that I can go ahead and cover if you don't have any more. Or do you want to do the CARES Act numbers?
Yeah, I think we can do that if you switch it over to me.
Okay.
Please. Oh, I have to share my screen, don't I? Always forget. So you all should be able to see that then?
I can see it.
Okay, thanks. This slide presentation is from what we did at the fall district meetings in October. So if you can go to our website under the presentation and trainings material, you want to go to the fall district meetings, and you can see we're on slide 30 is on your screen. So that all of those slides in that document should be there. These are the two most common COVID grants and numbers that we're aware of. The Coronavirus Relief Fund is 21.019. And that Provider Relief Fund that I mentioned a little earlier, that was the money that came out in March or April. If you had billed Medicare for in the previous year, so basically if you had an ambulance service that was billing for services, you probably got some money. It probably just showed up in your bank account. I know we had a lot of people call and say, hey, what is this? We did. And so that's why we went ahead and issued Fund 264 for that grant, and its CFDA number is 93.498. And then in that same presentation, we listed some others that we were aware of. It's probably a little difficult to see. I don't know how prevalent a lot of those are, but I went through the CFDA website and searched for COVID, and those were the numbers and the names and the federal agencies that came up. So you can see, like right in the middle, there's 93.211 telehealth programs. Well, I don't know if anybody in Indiana received a grant through that program or not, but it came from Health and Human Services, and it was 93.211. We have seen some, if you have a bus system, so we've seen some money come through the Federal Transit Formula grants, that 20.507, or maybe even 20.530, the Public Transportation Innovation. And one of the others, I thought there was, is the airport one part of the Federal Transit? Oh no, the airport, I have it highlighted. 21.106, the Airport Improvement Program. We've seen a lot of places get it, as well as the yellow highlight above that, the 14.225, the CDBG Special Purpose COVID Grants. So that's some information that you can find that we've provided. If you still aren't sure, and you can go down to this website, it's www.beta.sam.gov, and you can go there and you can search either the grant name or the grant number. So if you know the number, you're not sure what the name is for reporting, you can just search your number. If you have a name and you don't know what number it is, you can do it that way as well. If you don't have either, contact the agency that provided you the funds, which is probably the IFA, in most cases, the Indiana Finance Authority, and they should be able to tell you. I thought there was one other. There was also, we talked about CARES in November, and slides that looked like this. There's some information there on the fund numbers and some CFDA information, but not as much as what I just showed you. So if you want to go back to the October fall district meetings or the November monthly meeting on our website, you should be able to find that information. And then before I turn it back over to Susan for the administrative stuff, and again, I want to thank Allison for everything she did. There are some things that we get a lot of questions on, annual report related. So we wanted to stress, save your work as much as you can. Make sure your transfers in and out agree. If you call it a transfer in one place, but you don't call it a transfer in the other place, it's going to give you issues. As Susan mentioned, the required field. So if you see that a box that has a little in blue writing that says required, that means you're required to put something in there. And on a lot of the forms at the bottom of the screen, so if you scroll all the way down, there was that little box that Allison showed you to check that you've completed that form. Otherwise, it's going to show that it's not completed. Sometimes that's hard to see or remember that it's down there. And you can always unsubmit your annual report and make changes or do whatever you need to, but don't forget to resubmit it. And that unsubmit button is in the same place where you would go to submit it. So get a lot of questions on how do I unsubmit? I can't find it. It's in the same place where you go to click submit. That's kind of a toggle. Once you click submit, next time you get in there, it would say unsubmit. And we see a lot of people that go and make changes and they forget to resubmit it. So don't forget to do that. And you can unsubmit your AFR, but if you submit your 100R and you find out you did something wrong, you need to make a change, that one has to be unlocked by us. You can't unlock that one. You can unsubmit the annual financial report and make those changes. So if you need to get back in your AFR, you just need to let the Gateway Help Desk know and they can take care of that for you. And with that, I am done.
Okay, well, just a couple minutes of follow up on a few things. First of all, somebody did just ask if our audits were still going to be done remotely next year, and the answer to that is yes, we're still doing remote audits. That seems to be our new normal now. Also, somebody asked if we had a schedule of our monthly meetings. We did put in the December bulletin January and February, so the next one is February 17th. From 9 to 11, trying to keep the same time. And for the most part, we're trying to keep it on the third Wednesday, but that might fluctuate just in case, you know, AIM or somebody else has some event going on. We don't want to conflict with that. Also in March, we won't be having a monthly meeting, but instead we're going to concentrate on working with the league on the Institute and Academy. So, you know, please come to that. That's March 14th. To the 18th. You don't want to miss that. Also, if you didn't get your question answered today, if we happen to overlook it in either the chat or the Q&A, that was not intentional, but please email us your question and we will get an answer to you on that. And then one other thing, Todd and I, you know, we're always trying to do new things. So a new thing that we do here is to offer some not monthly, but some scheduled appointments with us if you would like to take, you know, half an hour or 15 minutes or whatever you'd want and talk to us or talk through an issue with us, have us look at some documents with you virtually. We're going to set aside Thursday mornings as time to do that if you would like to schedule an appointment. That way you don't have to wait for us to call you back or anything like that. So if you want to try and schedule an appointment with us for a Thursday morning, please email cities.towns at sboa.in.gov, and we'll schedule that appointment with you, and it can be a little longer, and we're hoping that that will be helpful. Now, if you ask for a different day, would we do that? Well, of course we would. You know, you let us know what will meet your needs, but we're trying for right now to just set aside Thursday mornings to see if anybody would like that option of meeting with us that way. And we'll try it for 2 or 3 months, and we'll see if it if you like that or you don't like that, and then we'll decide if we need to continue it or not. But hopefully it'll be of help to you. So with that, I think we are done. We again thank Allison so much for being here today, and we appreciate all of her work and her team's work and helping us get through this gateway season. So with that, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you all for your time.